Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We publish new videos every day. Don't forget, grab your smartphone and download the mahā-mantra app and stay in touch. Guru Mahārāja's message is your advantage. The following is a Sri Kṛṣṇa Caitanya book compilation given by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Mahārāja on April 3rd, 2022 at New Māyāvādī Dham in Atlanta, Georgia, USA.
Māyāvādī Philosophers Stress. Tvam asi. To cover the real mahā-mantra, oṁkāra. Under the section, all the residents of Varanasi become Vaishnavas. Caitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, Chapter 7, text number 128.
বেদ তরুর বীজ প্রণবী মহাকাব্য ও ঈশ্বর স্বরূপ প্রণব সে মহাকাব্য বেদেরও নিদান ঈশ্বর স্বরূপ প্রণাম সর্ববিশ্বধাম.
The Vedic sound vibration of oṁkāra, the principal word in the Vedic literatures, is the basis of all Vedic vibrations. Therefore, one should accept oṁkāra as a sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is the word of the cosmic manifestation. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text number 13, the glories of oṁkāra are described as follows. Om eka aksharam brahma vyāreina mam anusmaran ya prayati tajan deham sa yati paramam gatim. This verse indicates that oṁkāra or pranava is a direct representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, if at the time of death one simply remembers oṁkāra, he remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is therefore immediately transferred to the spiritual world. Oṁkāra is the basic principle of all Vedic mantras, for it is a representation of Lord Kṛṣṇa, understanding of whom is the ultimate goal of the Vedas, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Vedesya sarva aham eva vedya. Māyāvādī philosophers cannot understand these simple facts explained in the Bhagavad Gita, and yet they are very proud of being Vedantis. Sometimes, therefore, we refer to the Vedanti philosophers as Vedantis, those who have no teeth. V means without, and Danti means possessing teeth. The statements of the Shankara philosophies, which are of the Māyāvādī philosophers, are always broken by the strong arguments of Vaishnava philosophers, such as the great Acharyas, especially Ramanujacharya. Sripad Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya break the teeth of the Māyāvādī philosophers, who may therefore be called Vedantis, toothless. As mentioned above, the transcendental vibration, oṁkāra, is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 30. After being situated in yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and puts his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. Unquote. If one actually understands that oṁkāra is the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether he chants oṁkāra or the Hare Krishna mantra, the result is certainly the same. The transcendental vibration of oṁkāra is further explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 17. Pitaham asya jagato mata dhata pitamaha vedyam pavitram oṁkāra rik sama yajud evacha. I am the father of the universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rik, the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas. Similarly, the transcendental sound Om is further explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, verse 43. Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdesho Brahmanastri Vidhasmita Brahmanastena Vedascha Yagnascha Vihita Pura. From the beginning of creation, the three syllables Om Tat Sat have been used to indicate the supreme absolute truth, Brahman. They were uttered by Brahmanas while chanting Vedic hymns and doing sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Throughout all the Vedic literatures, the glories of oṁkāra are specifically mentioned. Sri Jiva Goswami, in his thesis Bhagavad Sandarbha, says that in the Vedic literature, oṁkāra is considered to be the sound vibration of the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only this vibration of transcendental sound can deliver a conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. Sometimes oṁkāra is also called the deliverer, Tara. Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the oṁkāra vibrations. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Therefore, oṁkāra has been described by the great commentator Srila Swami as Tara Ankura, the seed of deliverance from the material body. Since the Supreme Godhead is absolute, His holy name and His sound vibration oṁkāra are as good as He Himself. Caitanya Mahaprabhu says that the holy name of oṁkāra, the transcendental representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has all the potencies of the Personality of Godhead. Namnamakali Abhuda Divisarva Saktis Tatatanyamita Smaranena Kalaha. All potencies are invested in the holy vibration of the holy name of the Lord. There is no doubt that the holy name of the Lord, oṁkāra, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. In other words, anyone who chants oṁkāra and the holy name of the Lord, Hare Kṛṣṇa, immediately meets the Supreme Lord directly in His sound form. In the Narada Pancharatra, it is clearly said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan personally appears before the chanter who engages in chanting the Ashta Akshara or 8-syllable mantra, Om Namo Narayana. A similar statement in the Mandukya Upanishad declares that whatever one sees in the spiritual world is all an expansion of the spiritual potency of oṁkāra. On the basis of all the Upanishads, Sri Jiva Goswami says that oṁkāra is the supreme absolute truth and accepted as such by all the acharyas and authorities. Oṁkāra is beginningless, changeless, supreme, and free from deterioration and external contamination. Oṁkāra is the origin, middle, and end of everything. And any living entity who thus understands oṁkāra attains the perfection of spiritual identity in oṁkāra. Oṁkāra, being situated in everyone's heart, is Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse number 61, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridayesha Arjuna. Oṁkāra is as good as Vishnu because oṁkāra is as all-pervasive as Vishnu. One who knows oṁkāra without Vishnu to be identical no longer has to lament or anger. One who chants oṁkāra no longer remains a Shudra but immediately comes to the position of a Brahman. Simply by chanting oṁkāra, one can understand the whole creation to be one unit. or an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Idam hi vishwam bhagavan evataro yato jagatsthana niroda sambhava. The Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, is Himself this cosmos, and still He is aloof from it. From Him only this cosmic manifestation has emanated. In Him it rests, and to Him it enters after annihilation. Although one who does not understand concludes otherwise. Srimad Bhagavatam states that the entire cosmic manifestation is but an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Realization of this is possible simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, oṁkāra. One should not, however, foolishly conclude that because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is omnipotent, we have manufactured a combination of letters A, U, and Ma to represent Him. Factually, the transcendental sound oṁkāra, although a combination of three letters A, U, and Ma, has transcendental potency, and one who chants oṁkāra will very soon realize oṁkāra, the Lord Vishnu, to be non-different. Kṛṣṇa declares, Pranava sarva vedeshu, I am the symbol Om in the Vedic mantras. One should therefore conclude that among the many incarnations of Supreme Personality of Godhead, oṁkāra is a sound vibration, sound incarnation. All the Vedas accept this thesis. One should always remember the holy name of the Lord and Lord Himself are always identical. Avindatvam namanavino. Since oṁkāra is a basic principle of all Vedic knowledge, it is uttered before one begins to chant any Vedic hymn. Without oṁkāra, no Vedic mantra is successful. The Swami therefore declared that Pranava, oṁkāra, is a complete representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they have analyzed oṁkāra in terms of its alphabetical constituents as follows. Ākarane uchate Kṛṣṇa sarvalokaikanayaka Ukarane uchate Radha makaro Jayapataka. Oṁkāra is a combination of the letters A, U, and Ma. Ākarane uchate Kṛṣṇa. Letter A, Akara, refers to Kṛṣṇa, who is Sarva Lokaikanayaka, the master of all living entities and planets, material and spiritual. Nayaka, leader, he is supreme leader. Nityo Nityanam Chetnas Chetnana. The letter U, Ukara, indicates Srimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of Kṛṣṇa. And Mahārāja indicates the living entities, jivas. Thus, Om is a complete combination of Kṛṣṇa, His potencies, and His eternal servitors. In other words, oṁkāra represents Kṛṣṇa, His name, fame, pastimes, entourage, expansions, devotees, potencies, and everything else pertaining to Him. As Caitanya Mahaprabhu states in the present verse of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarva Vishwadhama, oṁkāra is the resting place of everything, just as Kṛṣṇa is the resting place of everything. Brahmanohi Pratishtham. The Māyāvādī philosophers consider many Vedic mantras to be the mahā-mantra, or principal Vedic mantras, such as Tattvamasi, Chandogya Upanishad 6-8-7, Idam Sarvam Yat Ayam Atma, and Brahmidam Sarvam, and Atmavidam Sarvam, Nanasti Kinchana. That is a great mistake. Only oṁkāra is the mahā-mantra. All these other mantras, the Māyāvādī accept as mahā-mantra, are only incidental. They cannot be taken as a mahā-mantra or mahā-mantra. The mantra Tat Tvam Asi indicates only a partial understanding of the Vedas. Unlike oṁkāra, which represents the full understanding of the Vedas. Therefore, The transcendental sound that includes all Vedic knowledge is oṁkāra, pranava. Aside from oṁkāra, none of the words uttered by the fallen Shankaracharya can be considered the mahā-mantra. They are merely passing remarks. Shankaracharya, however, has never stressed chanting of the mahā-mantra oṁkāra. He has accepted only tvam as a mahā-mantra. Imagining the living entity to be God, he has misrepresented all the mantras of the Vedanta Sutra with the motive of proving there is no separate existence of the living entities and the supreme absolute truth. This is similar to the politician's attempt to prove non-violence from Bhagavad Gita. Kṛṣṇa is violent to demons, and to attempt to prove that Kṛṣṇa is not violent is ultimately denying Kṛṣṇa. As such, explanations of the Bhagavad Gita are absurd. So also, Shankaracharya's explanation of the Vedanta Sutra. And no sane and reasonable man will accept it. At present, however, the Vedanta Sutra is misrepresented not only by the so-called Vedantis, but also by other unscrupulous persons who are so degraded that they even recommend that sannyasis eat meat, fish, and eggs. In this way, the so-called followers of Shankara, the impersonalist Māyāvādīs, are sinking lower and lower. How can these degraded men explain the Vedanta Sutra, which is the essence of all Vedic literature? Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu has declared Māyāvādī Bhāsya Sunile Haya Sarvanash. Anyone who hears commentary on the Vedanta Sutra in the Māyāvāda school is completely doomed. As explained in the Bhagavad Gita 15:50, Vedesya Sarva Ahameva Vedya. All Vedic literature aims at understanding Kṛṣṇa. Māyāvādī philosophy, however, has deviated everyone from Kṛṣṇa. Therefore, there is a great need for Kṛṣṇa consciousness movement all around the world to save the world from degradation. Every intelligent and sane man must abandon the philosophical explanation of the Māyāvāda and accept the explanation of Vaishnava Acharyas. One should read Bhagavad Gita as it is to try to understand the real purpose of the Vedas.
There's actually three letters. Ma.
So Om is actually three letters. U, and Ma.
Means as the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
It means is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Is his energies.
U is his energies.
Ma are the living entities.
And Ma are the living entities.
So, thinking of a Supreme Personality of Godhead and chanting Om.
So thinking of Supreme Personality of Godhead and chanting Om,
one goes back to Godhead.
One goes back to Godhead.
And unfortunately, Shankaracharya, he neglected oṁkāra.
Unfortunately, Shankaracharya neglected oṁkāra.
And he said, tvam is the mahā-mantra.
And he said, tvam is a mahā-vakya.
But actually, all the acharyas said that the real mahā-mantra is oṁkāra.
But actually, all the acharyas said the real mahā-vakya is oṁkāra.
So, chanting the Om or chanting the Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra is recommended.
So chanting the Om or chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is recommended.
But the Māyāvādīs, they deviate one from personality Godhead.
But the Māyāvādīs, they do not believe in the Supreme Personality Godhead. Deviate.
So that's why Lord Caitanya said, listening to the Māyāvādī explanation of the Compilation Sutra, one is doomed.
That's why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, listening to the Māyāvāda explanation of the Shankaracharya makes one doomed.
So, maybe wondering why such a long purport.
You may be wondering why such a long purport.
Of course, this is very subtle, but Om is considered most important.
Of course, this is very subtle, but Om is considered most important.
And somehow the Māyāvādīs, they avoid Om.
Some of the Māyāvādīs, they avoid Om.
So this is a very important thing.
So this is very important.
We see that everything comes from the Supreme Personality Godhead. See that everything comes.
So we see that everything comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
He is represented by Om.
And he is represented by Om.
So, Vedanti. Vedanta means teeth.
Prabhupada wrote Vedanti. Vedanti means teeth.
Ved means no.
V means no.
No teeth.
So Vedanti means no teeth.
Arguments don't have any sense.
Māyāvādī, no sense.
So, there's people are misunderstanding that the Supreme Personality Godhead is not the real cause. I think that personal truth is the cause.
These people are misunderstanding that Supreme Personality of Godhead is not the real cause. They think there is some impersonal cause to everything.
So, this Suddha Advaita, pure oneness.
So they believe in Shuddha Advaita, pure oneness.
It confuses all people.
It confuses all people.
So we should be very careful not to think of the impersonal truth.
So we should be very careful not to think of the impersonal truth.
Unfortunately, on the Western philosophies based on the Bible or Quran, they tend to see the actual truth as impersonal.
Fortunately, most of the Western philosophies like Bible, Quran, see the Supreme Truth to be impersonal.
In the Bible, they say Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
But in the Bible, it says Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
How they went now we find that people are impersonal.
So how do you find people are impersonal?
So, Lord Caitanya, is explaining to the Māyāvādī sannyasis
So Lord Chaitanya is explaining to the Māyāvādī sannyasis
the actual purpose of the Vedanta Sutra.
the actual purpose of the Vedanta Sutra.
This is shocking to the Māyāvādis.
This is shocking to the Māyāvādis. Chaitanya Adilya, chapter 7, text number 129.
ঈশ্বর বাচ্য প্রণব বাচক তত্ত্বমস্যাদি বেদের একাংশ প্রত্যক মাত্র সর্বাশ্রয় ঈশ্বরের করি প্রণব উদ্দেশ তত্ত্বমসি বাক্য হয় বেদের এক দেশ.
It is the purpose of the Supreme Personality Godhead to present Pranava, oṁkāra, as the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge. The words tat, tvam, asi are only a partial explanation of Vedic knowledge. Tat, tvam, asi means you are the same spiritual identity.
So, see why they're presenting Tattvamasi. I'm not saying that everybody is the same absolute truth.
So you're seeing how they're saying the Tattvamasi is all absolute truth.
So the Māyāvādis address each other as Narayana.
So Māyāvādis address each other as Narayana.
They are saying that everybody is God.
So they're saying that everybody is God.
So that's why this deviation is so great.
So that's why this deviation is so great. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adilya, chapter 7, text number 130.
প্রণব মহাবাক্য তাহা করি আচ্ছাদন মহাবাক্যে করি তত্ত্ব মসির স্থাপন.
Pranava, oṁkāra, is a mahā-vakya, mahā-mantra in the Vedas. Shankaracharya's followers covered this to stress without authority the mantra tat, tvam, asi. Purport. The Māyāvādī philosophers stress the statements tat, tvam, asi, soham, etc. But they do not stress the real mahā-mantra, pranava, oṁkāra. Therefore, because this represents Vedic knowledge, they are the greatest offenders to the lotus feet of Lord.
Wow!
Offenders.
Greatest.
The greatest. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says clearly, Māyāvādī Krishna Aparādhi. Māyāvādī philosophers are the greatest offenders to Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna declares, Tanaham Dushita Kṛṣṇa Samsāreshu Naradhaman Shivami Ādrisham Ashubhan Asurishu Eva Yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among mankind, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life.
Wow!
Life in demoniac species awaits the Māyāvādī philosophers after death because they're envious of Krishna. When Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text number 34, Manmanabha Madbhakto Madhadiman Vaskuru, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Chapter 7, text number 131.
বেদাদি শাস্ত্রের অভিধান ভিত্তিতে কৃষ্ণই স্বীকৃত সর্ববেদের সূত্রে করে কৃষ্ণের অভিধান মুখ্য বৃত্তি ছাড়ি কইল লক্ষণাবেক্ষণ.
In all the Vedic sutras and literatures, it is Lord Kṛṣṇa who is to be understood. But the followers of Shankaracharya have covered the real meaning of the Vedas with indirect explanations. Purport. It is said, Vede gamane chaiva purane bharata katha adamante cha madhe cha harim sarvatra giyate. In the Vedic literature, including the Ramayana, Puranas, and Mahabharata, from the very beginning, Adao, to the end, Ante cha, as well as within the middle, Madhya cha, only Hari, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained.
So, beginning and middle, Hari is being explained.
So, beginning and middle, Hari is being explained.
The Supreme Personality is being focused on.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is being focused upon.
But the Māyāvādīs, they avoid Hari or Kṛṣṇa.
But the Māyāvādīs, they avoid Hari or Kṛṣṇa.
And they come up with personal interpretation.
And they come up with impersonal interpretations.
So we should be very careful not to subject ourselves to Shankaracharya, Māyāvādī Vakya.
So we should be very careful not to subject ourselves to Shankaracharya, Māyāvādī Vakya. Chaitanya Adilila, chapter 7, text number 132.
নিরপেক্ষ শব্দ প্রমাণই সর্বশ্রেষ্ঠ শব্দ প্রমাণ বেদ প্রমাণ শিরোমণি লক্ষণা করিলে শত প্রমাণ তাহানি.
The self-evident Vedic literatures are the highest evidence of all. But if these literatures are interpreted, their self-evident nature is lost. We quote Vedic evidence to support our statements. But if we interpret it according to our own judgment, the authority of the Vedic literature is rendered imperfect or useless. In other words, by interpreting the Vedic version, one minimizes the value of Vedic evidence. When one quotes from Vedic literature, it is understood the quotations are authoritative. How can one bring the authority under his own control? That is the case of Principis Obsta.
See, in discussions with the pundits, they would quote different verses of the Vedas.
You see, in discussion with the pundits, they would quote different verses from the Vedas.
And those verses were considered as evidence.
And those verses were considered as evidence.
But if one interprets the Vedas in their own way, then the Vedas lose the importance.
So if one interprets from the Vedas in their own way, the Vedas lose importance.
We find that, like Prabhupada, in Bhagavad Gita as it is, he would quote Bhagavad Gita as it is.
So we find that Srila Prabhupada titles Bhagavad Gita as it is, and he would quote from Bhagavad Gita as it is.
So that when that Gita was accepted as evidence.
So that Gita was accepted as the evidence.
But the Shankaracharya, in some ways, he avoided this idea of the Vedas.
So the Shankaracharya somehow avoided this idea of the Vedas.
And that created confusion.
And in that, he created confusion.
He was asked to do that by Kṛṣṇa.
He was asked to do that by Kṛṣṇa.
That's not his fault.
That's not his fault.
But he did that in order to bring the Buddhists back to the Vedic version.
He did that to bring back the Buddhists back to the Vedas.
But actually, we should hear from the Vaishnava Acharyas.
But actually, we should hear from the Vaishnava Acharyas.
Like Acharya, Mahārāja, Caitanya,
Like Ramanujacharya, Madhavacharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
and not the Māyāvādī.
and not the Māyāvādī. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 7, text number 133.
শঙ্করের ব্যাখ্যা লক্ষণা ভিত্তিমূলা সুতরাং কাল্পনিক এই মতো প্রতিসূত্রে সহজার্থ ছাড়িয়া গৌণার্থ ব্যাখ্যা করে কল্পনা করিয়া।
Translation of Prabhupada. To prove their philosophy, the members of the Mayāvāda school have given up the real, easily understood meaning of the Vedic literature and introduce indirect meanings based on their imaginative powers. Purpose. Ashir Prabhupada. Unfortunately, the Shankaran interpretation has covered almost the entire world. Therefore, there is a great need to present the original, easily understood, natural import of the Vedic literature. We have therefore begun by presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we propose to present all the Vedic literature in terms of the direct meaning of its words. Thus ends the chapter entitled Māyāvādī Philosophers Stress tvam to cover the real mahā-mantra oṁkāra under the section How all the residents of Varanasi became Vaishnavas.
So, when Caitanya was presenting these arguments to the Māyāvādī sannyasis,
Lord Chaitanya was presenting his arguments to the Māyāvādī sannyasis.
thus they could understand that what they've been studying was incorrect.
Thus they could understand that what they have been studying was incorrect.
And that Lord Caitanya was explaining the things in a very simple way.
And Lord Chaitanya was explaining the things in a very simple way.
Prabhupada, he wanted to present the Vedas as it is.
Srila Prabhupada wanted to present the Vedas as it is.
He was asked to recommend Bhagavad Gita that his followers could read.
He was asked to recommend a Bhagavad Gita that his followers could read.
But although there are 400 Gitas in English,
But although there were 400 Gitas in English,
he couldn't recommend anyone because the authors had changed things to show their own imaginable power.
but the authors have changed things to show their own imaginable powers.
And so actually, Lord Caitanya, he met the Vijaya Keshav Kashmiri,
So actually Lord Chaitanya met the Vijaya Keshav Kashmiri,
and he said that he'd like to hear his composition glorifying the Ganges.
And he said he would like to hear his composition glorifying Ganges.
So Kṛṣṇa started to compose 100 verses.
So Kṛṣṇa Kashmiri started to compose 108 verses.
And Lord Caitanya asked him, could you please tell me the defects and the good qualities of your composition?
So Lord Chaitanya asked him, could you please tell me the defects and good qualities of your composition?
So he said, defects? No defects. My composition is perfect.
So he said, defects? My composition has no defects, it's perfect.
And Lord Caitanya, he picked out one of the verses, 57 or something.
Lord Chaitanya picked out one of the verses, 57 or something.
And he explained the good quality of that verse.
So he explained the good quality of that verse.
And then he explained some of the defects of that verse.
Then he explained some of the defects of that verse.
He said that you said he had quoted and said that Lord Shiva had caught the Ganges in his hair.
So he said that you had said Lord Shiva had caught Ganges in his head.
But the words he used was that husband of Baba was caught the Ganges in his hair.
But the word he had used in the verse said the husband of the Bhava had caught Ganges in his head.
So that was somewhat confusing. Does that mean that Durga had two husbands?
So that was the confusing. Does that mean that Durga had two husbands?
He quoted that Durga husband.
Because he quoted Durga husband.
So I got his thoughts on the defects.
So like that he pointed out some defects.
And Jason Padre is trying to Saraswati, why did you defeat me?
So Kṛṣṇa Kashmiri, he prayed to Saraswati and said, why did this youth defeat me?
Why didn't you save me?
Why didn't you save me?
And then Saraswati told him, he's my husband.
And Saraswati told him, he's my husband.
I can't defend you against him.
I can't defend you against him.
So, by this he realized that Lord Caitanya was Kṛṣṇa himself.
By this he realized Lord Chaitanya is Kṛṣṇa himself.
Then he went to the house of Lord Caitanya.
Then he went to the house of Lord Chaitanya.
And offered his obeisances.
And he offered his obeisances.
And then he realized that who Lord Caitanya was.
Then he realized who Lord Chaitanya was.
And so Lord Caitanya wanted to defeat him, but in such a way that it was like a subtle.
So Lord Chaitanya wanted to defeat him in such a way that it was subtle.
Otherwise, steal the abundance of Navadip, to steal his horses, elephants.
Because otherwise, the Pandits of Navadvip would steal his forces, his alibis.
So after that, he surrendered to Lord Caitanya, became an acharya in the new Varga school.
So after that, he surrendered to Lord Caitanya and became an acharya in the Nimbarka school.
So, Lord Caitanya, naturally, he's the greatest scholar.
Lord Caitanya, naturally, is the greatest scholar.
But he was presenting himself very humbly.
But he was presenting himself very humbly.
And but in his presentation, he presented the Māyāvādī philosophy full of defects.
But in his presentation of Mahārāja philosophy, he presented that it's full of defects.
So, Māyāvādī was taught the philosophy, but the real mahā-mantra is oṁkāra.
So the Māyāvādis use tvam, but the real mahā-mantra is oṁkāra.
Do you like our ad-free videos? Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We publish new videos every day, and don't forget to like and share our channel.